Good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. We are now on the session number 179 in the WiseViews Leadership Conversations. And today we have a young entrepreneur who has joined us. Please join me in welcoming Rahul Varma. Good evening and welcome, Rahul. Thank you so much for sparing your time for this potentially useful conversation. What I'll do is I'll share my screen and I'll do a brief introduction, and after that your opening remarks would begin with your presentation. So allow me to share my screen, please. As I mentioned, these are WiseViews Leadership Conversations, which we have been hosting for more than 3.5 years now, little less than 4 years. And we are at session number 179, as I mentioned some time back. So it's a great pleasure to look at leaders who come from various backgrounds and various age groups as well. Today, we are talking about startup survival, profitability versus growth. It's not an easier topic to talk about, but we have Rahul who has pitched in with this topic. I welcome him to this leadership conversation. I'll do a brief introduction, and after that, Rahul will start the opening remarks, and then we'll have Q&A in two clusters, all put together 1 hour. This is young and handsome Rahul, who has joined us, co-founder of Unschool. He's also Forbes Asia Under 30 Honoree. That's a very prestigious recognition for Rahul. He's the CEO and co-founder of Unschool, as I mentioned. Before that, he was the COO at the Climber. Climber had a mentoring platform, My Captain, and that helped the students to pursue their passion and make an informed career choice. Very, very useful. And he was the vice president operations at ICFAI in India, both in Hyderabad as well as I think in Chennai. His areas of expertise range from digital marketing strategies, sales and operations strategy, go-to-market strategy, partnership management and sales, general management, government and stakeholder relations, training, business development, international relations, marketing strategy, and team management, P&L responsibility, so on and so forth. And that's what CEOs and founders engage in. He's also into software development, team leadership, marketing, business strategy, and AI. He attended the Y Combinator Winter 21 batch, which is considered as one of the world's best startup accelerator programs and investors. He holds a BTech from computer science from SRM University. And from the same university, he has received Eminent Alumni Award in the year 2024. And he also plays cricket. Rahul is a good name for cricket. So welcome, Rahul. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak on our platform, and we look forward to having a wonderful conversation this evening. Allow me some more time to make a small introduction of my esteemed colleague, Dr. Prasad. He is the Senior Director of Academic Wing at ICFAI Group. He brings a rich experience of 3 decades, that is of as an entrepreneur, as a corporate leader, and now as an academic at the ICFAI Group. He holds BTech from IIT Bombay and PGDM from IIM Kolkata. Thank you very much, Professor Prasad. Thanks for joining. And we will stop sharing the screen here. We are all set to listen to you, Rahul. Have a great run. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Sudhakar, Dr. Prasad, for having me here. It's really a pleasure. I mean, I'm used to getting a lot of invites from probably student coordinators or VSELs or fests or otherwise. But to see a director of a college group reaching out and or getting on a call with me, explaining things with me, sharing the link to join the call. So all of this, I think, is very surprisingly and pleasantly, welcoming for me. So thank you so much. And I think professors like you, people like you are the ones who is moving the youth forward, who's moving, people like us. There's a reason for us why we do things. Like as an entrepreneur, we go through a lot of ups and downs. In fact, more downs than ups. But in moments like this, we just remember all of our, history, all of our journey. And then it seems all worth it, when we are going, like, for example, when I went back to my college to receive an alumni award, that I was on cloud 9. Not that it means a lot, but for me and for my parents, it meant a lot. So I sort of get a similar feeling when I'm doing this talk right now. So on that note, I heartily thank the ICFAI group and both of you, sirs, for inviting me here. And I'm very excited to speak to the audience and share 2 cents of the information that I've got spending the last decade in education in the startup sector. So with your permission, I'll just get started. Yeah. If I can have the presentation, please. So yeah, I think Mr. Sudhakar has already given you a very deep overview of my profile. We recently were fortunate enough to get into the Forbes Asia 30 under 30 list. It's basically a gathering of 30 people in a particular category under the age of 30 in the whole continent of Asia. Before that, in 2020, we were ranked number 3 on LinkedIn's top startups list. We are also an approved partner with National Skill Development Corporation. Y Combinator, I would invite and request and urge all of the attendees today to please have a look at ycombinator.com. It's one of the first accelerators in the world from which came out companies like Dropbox, Meesho, Airbnb, you name it. It's there. In fact, OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman was once the president of Y Combinator. And yes, T-Hub, being a Hyderabadi, we were initially at the early stages in 2019, incubated in T-Hub, and that's where we started our journey. So that's about me. And to tell you a little bit about the company, so Unschool is basically an edtech startup that we began in 2019. So it's essentially a marketplace for industry experts or leaders from around the world to create high quality courses on the platform and for students to learn from those courses. Essentially, what we did is there are a lot of people out there with a lot of industry experience. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of knowledge, but they do not have the right marketing skills to convey their knowledge or portray their skills or their courses to the wider range of audience out there. So that's what Unschool did. We provided them with the platform to be able to showcase their skills and to share their knowledge with the wider group of audience. So our target audience is basically college going students. College going students take the courses that are created by these industry leaders. And where Unschool comes in is first question when we started up in a edtech company, there was already pioneers like Udemy, Coursera, etc. And multiple even government-based or college-based schemes like Swayam delivered by IIT and IIM professors and run by the central government. There were many platforms. And inside those many platforms were many users. And inside those many users or platforms were many courses as well. So the first question naturally came to us saying, why is there a need for another edtech startup? But when we looked into it deeply, we identified two problems. I don't have a live audience here, but if I could see the chat, I would love to understand from everyone, what do you think is the first step of starting up a company? If you could just send me your messages on chat, what do you think is the first step? Passion, identify purpose. Thank you, Dr. Sujin. Thank you, Pradeep Garu. Thank you, Suresh Garu. Purpose. Okay. Scope limits, passion. All right. So I mean, these are all very nice, right? But at the end of the day, it's all subjective. How do you say that I have more purpose than you, and how can you identify that you have less purpose than me, right? So purpose doesn't drive you alone as an entrepreneur. Purpose can drive you in a lot of things in many ways. Similarly, passion, right? So essentially, the first step of starting a startup or a business is identifying a problem. Please remember this. You need to be able to identify a problem. Correct, Dr. Anita, problem with solution. I mean, solution comes later, right? How deeply are you understanding the problem becomes one of the first steps. And to continue, essentially, the problem that we identified at Unschool was that Coursera, Udemy, while they were brilliant platforms, had brilliant courses delivered by brilliant leaders, they only had 3% completion rates. That means every 3 out of 100 students who would actually sign up would actually complete the course. Then that begs the question, right? Is it really helping? Why are there millions of users on these platforms? To get a certificate or to probably add to their LinkedIn skills? Like Mr. Sudhakar read out a long list for me, right, that I had added on LinkedIn. I was one of those people to just take a course somewhere, add it to my resume, hoping that this will get me the interview during my placement process in college. Not so long ago, but that was clearly not where it got me. So that was one. And the second thing is, after you learned a course, what is the guaranteed outcome? How do you measure that this course helped you? How was it tangible? So that was the second problem, right? There were platforms that were teaching you, and then there were platforms like Naukri, Monster, Internshala, etc., that were providing opportunities for you to apply for jobs and internships. But there was no one platform that brought both of these together. So one, Unschool, without getting deeper into it, is able to deliver 60% completion rates in the self-paced module, which is the highest in the world and is about 15 times the global average. The second is we are able to place 8 out of 10 students who complete a course with Unschool within the Unschool ecosystem. So Unschool is not just a pre-recorded video course platform. It is also a platform or an ecosystem that brings together people who want to learn and eventually, from the skills that they acquired from the course, get an internship or a job. So that's what Unschool is. And the several awards and recognitions are credit to Unschool and my absolutely lovely team members who made it happen over the last 5 years for us, right? So coming back, can we go one slide back, please? Yeah. So we're going to talk about startup survival, profitability versus growth. So can someone answer this for me on the chat again? What do you think is important for a startup? Is it profitability or is it growth? I mean, forget the fact that I wrote finding the balance for startups is important, but what would you say personally? What do you believe is more important? Growth. Can you please define for me? Let me take an extra minute. After this, I'll stop asking questions. Thank you so much for answering, by the way. There's a very lively audience, very rare to find nowadays in an online space. So, okay, you've got growth as a startup. You're not making profits, which means you're not taking money back home as salary or into your pockets. So, what does growth mean for you? Because if you're not making profits, how are you going to take a big check back home? Isn't that why you started a company in the first place? Yes, passion is there, but you also wanted to become a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever goals and ambitions that you had. We need to wait for incubation period. So if I could request Bhaskar Garu, Payal Garu, Varshini Garu, Vanishri Garu, all of you wrote growth. So tell me, what is growth for you then? Why would you choose growth over profitability? As you grow, you get profit. Okay. For sustainability, both are needed. But then that's a question, right? It's like the chicken and egg. What came first, chicken or the egg? That's an ongoing debate. Probably a few scientists have answered that question. Okay, fine. I think I've tinkered your brain enough. Let's move to the next slide. So finding the balance for startups is extremely important, right? If you had to scale, put it on a scale, it's very important that you go through both of them. So first point, what I would like you to say, and also if I could request you to have a pen and a notebook in front of you to just note down things. The first thing I would ask you to note down is, while growth is crucial for early stage startups, a focus on profitability is essential for long-term sustainability. This is something I want you to remember. While growth is crucial for early stage startups, focus on profitability is essential for long-term sustainability. That means that if you want to survive in the long term, when I say long term, what is that period? 7+ years, right? Essentially to make a legacy business or a lifestyle business. 7+ years, let's consider that as long-term sustainability. Profitability becomes very essential over there, right? Can we move to the next slide? This is basically definitions, right? What is profitability? Generating more revenue than your expenses. Very, very simple. If you're generating 10 lakhs in revenue per month and your expenses put together without taxes, I'm not talking about taxes. There's something called EBITDA. I'm not sure of the audience profile, but all of you have multiple years of experience in the industry here. So I'm assuming that you know what EBITDA is called. Basically, earnings before interest, taxes, deamortization, amortization, multiple things, right? So putting aside the taxes, which is called gross profit. Net profit is after you remove taxes and other things, interest, everything. But at the gross profit level, let's say you're making 10 lakhs per month as your business revenue. Your expenses are about 8 lakhs. You're taking 2 lakhs back home, and that's profitability. Very simple. But growth is basically not necessarily having profits. Probably sometimes, or most of the times in growth stage startups, your expenses are more than your revenue, which means you're spending 5 rupees to earn 1 rupee, which means your customer acquisition cost. Let's say that the product price, the price of your product that you're selling is 300 rupees. You've run a Google ad, you've run a Facebook ad, and to acquire you as a customer and make you pay for the product, I've ended up spending 1500 rupees. So, which means that I'm spending 5 rupees to make 1 rupee. So, that's called growth. But what this is going to be I mean, take an example of Uber, right? Take an example of Swiggy, take an example of Zomato. Anyone and everyone, when they came into the market, they gave away free coupons, they gave away extreme amount of discount to be able to increase their market share, which means that they got us hooked on to that product, made us use it again and again. Can you imagine that just probably about 7 to 8 years back, we never imagined ourselves clicking a button on the phone and having a cab stand in front of our house. It seems so difficult and impossible to even imagine this, right? But this was just about 7 to 8 years back, guys. It meant that we would, walk across the street, go to the main road, call for an auto, get onto the auto, get onto the taxi, or probably find a public transport. And I'm talking about 2015, 2016, and 2017. But then what Uber or Ola has done for us is change the way we live and breathe, right? So without us even realizing it. What Swiggy and Zomato has done for us is change the way we eat, change the way we live, change the way we take care of our health, in fact, right? So increasing market share, user base, or revenue at the cost of not having profits in the hope that eventually I will become profitable. Can some of you name for me the companies at the growth stage, please? The startups that are in the growth stage that are not making profits at the moment. Some product that you like, some company that you like or use on a weekly basis, on a regular basis. Could you name those startups for me on the chat, please? Swiggy, okay. Magic Pin. I think Magic Pin is profitable, but okay. Shroom Lady, okay. Not sure of these startups myself, sorry. Anyway, so essentially talk about Zepto, talk about Cred, the app, talk about anything else. Please go out there and research, put it on the internet. Paytm, yes. Country Delight. Can someone name a startup for me that was not profitable, went public, IPO, and then eventually became profitable today and they're doing very good? Their shares are really rising. One of the famous startups out there, Zomato. Wonderful, Mr. Bhaskar. Right? Zomato was not making profits at all. In fact, they were making very high losses, but somehow did a mediocre IPO and now they're rocking. Right? Their shares are zooming because their acquisition of Blinkit really worked out. Now they're in the profitable stage, which their competitor, Swiggy, is not able to do so far. So Swiggy has now come up with a Blinkit styled Instamart. Now they are trying to bring up something else, right? So eventually that's what becomes the thing. So next slide, please. So essentially growth, like I said, is increasing market share, user base, or revenue, sometimes at the expense of not having profits and running in losses. So what this gives you is essentially market domination, which means you're able to capture the market share before your competitors. And once someone is hooked to your platform, it's very difficult for someone to choose another product. Can you answer this question for me in the chat again? Is it costlier to acquire a new customer or to retain an old customer and make him or her buy the product the second time? I'll repeat this question. What is costlier, acquiring a new customer or bringing a customer who's already bought your product to buy another product again? What is costlier? Okay, we have mixed reviews and mixed answers here. The answer is acquiring a new customer is about 4 times more expensive than retaining an old customer to buy a product the second time. So what does this explain to you? Why did I bring up this anecdote or analogy, right? So market domination only occurs when you hit a threshold. There's something called a tipping point, right? It's like this rocket. For the rocket to get into the orbit in space, it needs to have certain, escape velocity, and it needs to cross the stratosphere. It won't cross the stratosphere if it does not have enough escape velocity. And that's called the tipping point. Once it crosses the tipping point, you can place the rocket at whatever orbit you want. You can adjust the height, you can make it go up, and you can make it come down as well. But once it comes again into the stratosphere, there's nothing but gravity. It just pulls you down. So that is what these startups in the growth phase try to do. Let's say I'm spending 10 rupees to get 1 rupee. It's fine. I will dominate the market so much that I'll make my users so hooked to me that a new competitor will take 10 years to convert my customer into their customer because they can never compete with me on prices. I will keep raising funds. I will keep giving them discounts and I will make them hooked onto the platform. But they will come one day. They will come 1 week or 1 month, like Geo, where I'll increase the prices completely, but you're still hooked on to me. Sorry. Maximum what will happen? 10% of my Geo users will port to Vodafone, will port to Airtel. But then in the process, Airtel and Vodafone also have similar prices as Geo, in fact, are much costlier. So that's what market domination means here. Second, network effects. Leverage growth itself as a competitive advantage. You're going to hit the escape velocity. You're going to become one of the sought out products. You're going to make people hooked onto your product, right? So that's very important. So for example, Zomato and Swiggy, there's a competitor, ONDC, right? ONDC is directly run by the central government, but they're still not able to compete with Zomato and Swiggy. Why? Central governments has lakhs of crores and trillions of dollars out there because the network effect has already been created. There's enough delivery boys, there's enough branding, there is enough downloads on the app, and there's enough orders on the app that the network effect has already kicked in. So I'll take 5 more minutes to round it up. Mr. Sudhakar, I realize that I'm running past time, so I'll just do it fast. Funding rounds, right? Attract investors seeking high growth potential. So what the investor is going to say is that, hey, I know you're doing the right thing. You know what? Keep running in losses for the next 2 years, but I'm going to give you certain targets, which means you need to have X downloads, you need to have X return customers, concurrent customers, etc., etc., etc. They're going to give you 10 KPIs, performance indicators. You meet all of this, but you run in losses, that's fine. I know that if you meet all of these 10 indicators, the third year is going to be yours. You increase the prices and no one is going to leave your platform. Even if they leave, 10% will leave your platform. The 90% is still your loyal customer. Next slide, please. On the other hand, there's also a pitfall or a disadvantage of growth at all costs. You have very high burn rate. What is a burn rate? Burn is the amount of spend or amount of expenses that you have to acquire a customer. You will lead to a cash shortage, cash flow problems. Rapid growth can strain cash flow even with high revenue. So even if you're doing 1,000 crores in revenue, but you're spending 10,000 crores, eventually you're going to hit a point where, there's no cash flow. Money coming into the bank is 10 times lesser than the money going out of the bank. And therefore that leads to diluted equity. What happens? Okay, my 10,000 crores are done. I need more funds. So let me find another investor. Let me give him 5% more. Let me give the another investor 5% more. Eventually, in about 7 years or 5 years, you end up in a place where you're owning 1% of your business. So are you really a founder? Are you really a owner? Are you really the CEO? That question you have to ask for yourself. And eventually, as part of this process, you lose focus. You'll get distracted from your core product and your customer needs. Next slide, please. So essentially, sorry, the heading is wrong here. We're talking about profitability here. It's like a bamboo tree, right? So when you sow a bamboo seed, it takes about 2 to 3 years for it to raise to a height of probably being 1 feet or 2 feet. But the very next year, in the second year, it grows to about 40 feet or 50 feet and sometimes even 80 feet in the air. So which means that it is going to grow its root deep into the mud, deep into the soil, preparing itself for very high exponential growth eventually. And that's what I say that, it's not needed for you to be a growth based startup. It's not needed for you to have lakhs and millions of users. You can always grow at a steady stage and create profitability. And that brings you sustainability. You have long-term viability. You have investor confidence that you've not been spending 10 rupees to get 1 rupee. In fact, you've been spending half a rupee to get 1 rupee from the customer. You make informed decision making. You're not always in a rush, right? And then you have resilience, which means that you are not depending on your investor to keep giving you money and to keep saving you each time to get to the next level. You're depending on yourself. You're depending on your own cash flow. You're depending on your reserve in the banks, and you're running your own show. And you probably are holding 90% of your company instead of 9% of your company as a growth stage startup. So that's a choice that you have to make. Next slide, please. So this is where it comes in, right? So please, again, this is a point that you can note down. Finding the balance is very important. Unit economics. Analyze the profitability of each individual customer or transaction, and always keep measuring the metrics that matter. Maybe your customer lifetime value. What is a customer lifetime value? Which means, let's say you take 1 year as the lifetime of a customer. It depends from product to product and company to company. So what is a lifetime value? Which means that in a year, is my customer coming back to my website and purchasing my product 5 times in a year? All the 5 purchases put together make your customer lifetime value. Do not focus on one-time purchases. So like this, there are multiple things: churn rate, customer acquisition cost, etc. The third thing is strategic investments are very, very important, right? For example, while I can't disclose this, Unschool's investor is the likes of founder of Cred. Mr. Kunal Shah is an investor in Unschool. Mr. Mekin Maheshwari, one of the co-founders of Flipkart, is an investor. Among these people, I also have an educational institution that has been there in the country for about 40 years doing IIT JEE training as one of the strategic investors at Unschool. So while I had the option to choose from Sequoia or the biggest investors and VCs out there, I chose to raise funds from someone who could help me in the long-term process. And I raised very little funds. So through this process, you're creating a growth flywheel, which means that your cash flows are making you a sustainable long-term startup, and you become a very independent startup on your own, where you hold majority stake in your own company. Next slide, please. So last, I would like to end with this. Growth is important, but profitability is essential for long-term success. I'm repeating this again. Prioritize unit economics and find the right balance between growth and profitability. In the early stages, you can focus on growth, but if you do not become profitable over time, you're not going to run the show beyond 5 years. You're going to be one of those people having, false ego or pretense that you are writing co-founder as a title on your LinkedIn, and people are probably showing you a lot of respect for that in the initial days, but only you are to suffer eventually. And growth without profit is eventually unsustainable. That's the end of it. I've taken about 5 minutes extra, but I think I'm good.
Yeah, no problem, Rahul. That was very good. You are a good teacher, actually. You have a lot of patience to explain the concepts to a variety of audience like this, which is actually not uniform. I think you still attempted that, and wonderful. Thanks for introducing us to these topics and the essence of these topics, essentially. And the beauty of this will now lie in the Q&A,
Right.
when we take up these questions and try and seek some answers and responses from you. It will be further more interesting. And I want to, at this stage, thank all the participants who have joined from various domains, from various cities, and some of them from UK that have joined. Thank you so much. Now, in the interest of time, we will straight away get into the Q&A. I'll request Professor Prasad to join and start cluster number one. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Thank you, Mr. Rahul, for bringing up a very important topic. There is a wave of startups in India, and the degree to which what you have said is understood, I think it needs far more awareness building as well as sensitization. An extremely important thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And also, I think, the slogan you have on your screen, enabling youth towards employability, I think they also need to understand this business of growth and profitability as much to make valuable contributions to their organizations. So, and second is you represent the demographics which India has dominantly, and you have understood this well from what you say. So I think these are very important points which make the session very valuable to us.
No, thank you so much, sir. In fact, if the audience was youth, that's what I would have started with, and I think it still holds. If you want to start a business because you want the fame, the glory, and the money that is attached to it, I think that's a very wrong reason. I don't mean to say it's a wrong reason. It's an unattainable reason. You won't get that. In fact, the startup founder is the last one to leave the office, first one to come to the office. There were days where I used to mop the office before my employees came in, because we didn't have enough funds to have maids and all of this. Even I came in with the idea that I'm going to be probably, if not a crorepati, but a lakpati by the second year of starting a company. Forget about that. I went into personal debts, credit card debts, reducing my credit score to a level that I couldn't retain it to a respectable score. So I think that's very important for people to learn. Some people learn it the hard way, but because of institutions like yours or events like this, it's very important to tell the youth out there and also professionals out there, saying, please start for the right reasons. And always remember one thing, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You won't get anything for the first 3 years. You will be the least earning employee in the company. All you have is percentage and hoping one day it will turn out to be something. So that's a message that I wanted to leave before we started the Q&A. Sorry to cut you off, sir, but I just connected to what you said.
Excellent. I think you're spot on. And I think this feeling of happiness that you mentioned in the beginning on the alumni, as well as I think you build a lot of unseen capital, which is not economic capital. And it is there for you to leverage when you need to going in the long term.
Very true, sir.
My focus would be more on, the journey that you've taken and
Sure.
how you connect to what you're saying from that journey.
Sure.
So let me start with you. When you started off into the space, and you would have made mistakes, you would have seen a lot of opportunities. So can you give us some use cases which, from your experience, which back what you have said, some different types?
Sure. What I can say is I considered this a mistake, but I thank the 25-year-old Rahul 5 years back for having taken that path. Let me explain that. For example, we joined T-Hub, right? We were incubated into their Lab 32 program. T-Hub had just initiated these kind of programs. And along with me were a bunch of other, like I think 20 startups, all started by people who had returned as NRIs from the US, made a lot of money in dollars, came back to start a company here after a successful stint as directors of Morgan Stanley's and JP Morgan's and whatnot, right? Which means that they have also had money to spare and, to provide that initial velocity to their startup. I was one of those people. One, we were very young, first time founders, having no godfathers, having done no MBAs, no doctorates, nothing. So we just went, we didn't go by the book. We just did what we felt was right. And one of those things was essentially not even having a website, not even having a learning management system, not even having courses done, but picking up the phone, making a few running ads on Facebook, picking up the phone and making a call saying that, hey, it's February right now. In April, which is about 2 months from now, we're going to have this course and these are the features that are going to be part of it. Would you like to purchase it for 1,500 rupees? And we realized that they were paying for it. You say the right things, you provide the right value, and people were paying for it. So for me, I was always under the assumption that I'm probably choosing the shortcut and this is not sustainable over a long period of time. While my peers in the same program in Lab 32 in T-Hub had money to spare and spent about 18 months, 9 months, 6 months, you call it, building their products, building their tech ecosystem, be it their website, be it their product, whatever it is. And then eventually releasing it to the market, only to realize that one, maybe they were too late and there was no point of spending crores or lakhs of money into building that product. Second, the product that they built was never tested as a minimum viable product or as a prototype with the market, that they realized that no one wants to use it. All of it was their own assumption. And they thought this is what customers would love. Instead, customers did not like it and never used it, right? So what I thought was a mistake turned out to be, one of the boon for me. I was profitable from day zero, right? Not even day one, because I had not had a website back then. I started selling. I started receiving revenue into the bank. So that's essentially, I think, like one of the things that I can still consider a mistake if you look at it the other way, that, I probably would have taken more time building a great product. And instead of one customer, I'd probably find 10 customers by doing the same amount of work. But then one thing I would say is that common mistake that I see in early stage founders is that they assume that this product is going to be a great hit and eventually end up spending a lot of time, a lot of effort, and releasing their product late into the market. And second, not releasing a prototype, but they want to run behind perfection. They want to say that, oh, this feature can bring more users, so let's add that and then launch it. Let's add that and then launch it. That becomes a never ending loop and a cycle that people get stuck in. It becomes a rat race, right? You're running in the same wheel. So I think that's one thing I see as a mistake and also as a good thing that I had done in the beginning.
Thank you. I think you remind me of agility, bootstrapping, a lot of which is
Yes.
extremely important in what you're saying. So let me move to the next question. The founder's perception of risk would differ based on whether they're focusing on growth or whether they're focusing on profitability. Now, what are your suggestions on identifying and managing such risk with use cases that you had in your experience?
Sure. So I think like basically eventually you need to be profitable, right? Otherwise it doesn't become a business. So even if you're focusing on growth, the point is make a product that customers want to use or want to have, right? And launch fast, fail fast. That's one of the things I would say. Just launch anything that you have, fail from it, take feedback, always have a feedback loop and mechanism going on around. Take feedback from your users. The most important role of a CEO is to speak to your customers. And I think 90% of the CEOs or the founders don't do this. They leave it to a customer support executive or a support team or a sales team to do this. So the moment you as a CEO jump in and speak to the customers, I think half the problems are solved there because you understand the deep-rooted problems and you identify what needs to be better. So I think launch fast and fail fast is what I would say. And yeah, in the process, just keep reiterating your product, release it as a prototype, release it as a minimum viable product. There's something called MVP. It's very, very important for everyone to understand this. And then focus on growth. No one is saying no to that. Your investors are going to go only give you money if you have enough users. That can be even a free app download. That can even be a free users who's not paying you a single penny. One, he's coming and signing up on your platform. Second, he's coming back the second day. He's coming back the third day. He's coming back the fourth day. And that's what makes a loyal customer or a repeat user. If you don't have that, no investor is anyway going to come to you. So there's no point of growth unless you are a person with crores in the bank account ready to spare that for your startup. Otherwise, there's no way of going about growth, right? If you have personal funds, go at it. Go with your gut feeling, focus on growth for the first 3 years. Don't care about profitability if you can afford that. But if you don't have that, if you don't have that safety net of your own funds, you need to create a great product which customers want to use and come back again to. Even if that means growth without profitability in the early stages, make sure that you build enough user base. And that will eventually lead to growth. That will eventually lead to profitability.
Thank you. You've rightly mentioned in the beginning about two parameters. One was the completion rate and the other is the outcome. And you did indicate that you have two outcomes. One is internship and the other is placements. Now, if you look at your value proposition and because you have a pricing, you have a certain set of programs. Now, on these, how is it distributed in the sense that, where are people willing to spend more, engage more, and get to outcomes? The market also has a behavior, because to get engaged, you also, it's not an easy task to get people to learn. 60% is a good figure of completion. So what is the balance you put in there in terms of, getting to internships, getting to placements? So there too also, one can over invest into something. So what do you do there?
Great question, sir. So I'll tell you funny things also. Like, I find it funny, at least. What we did is, when we initially started, we provide all of these features. We said high completion rates, we'll give you projects and all of that. And what we wanted to essentially create is, because what happens in college is, you're just not learning in the classroom, right? You're learning outside the classroom. You're learning through your clubs, your organizations, your extracurriculars, co-curriculars, etc. So we were like, how can we create that kind of an atmosphere? Because honestly, sitting in front of a computer and listening to hours and hours of pre-recorded videos is not anyone's cup of tea. Yeah, human, mindset is not designed that way. So biology is not designed that way. So what we did is, we took inspiration from these Western universities, or in fact Indian universities. Now they have a professor, and under the professor is a teaching assistant. The teaching assistant is most likely a student who is learning in the same classroom, but the teaching assistant is taking care of setting up the assessment, taking care of the calendar, evaluating the assignments that were done, etc., etc. So we took that and we said, what, just like a college nudges a student, we will also start nudging them. Hey, you know what? In 2 weeks, we've observed that most of our users complete about 30% of the course. You're still at 12%. What is stopping you from getting to that 30%, which is the average? So we used to call them up. We used to leave them messages. We used to take a date, and that person would be like, hey, no, I am going through exams right now. I can't do your course, man. My exams complete in about 10 days. Call me then. We used to actually make a note of those 10 days and call him back on the 11th day saying, now complete it, please. Right? So we said that until you get the minor project or the major project done, we won't give you the course completion certificate. You can't even continue with the course and watch the videos. Because most of the students, again, were like, I need to submit this certificate back in college. So let me just spend 5,000 rupees in the pretext that I would learn from a course, but eventually just skip all of the videos, generate the certificate, submit it in college, get my credit. So we understood this user behavior from the deep down. We started understanding how they think, what they think, why they do something. And in the beginning, like you said, sir, we provide outcome in the form of internships. And then what happened is, 99 out of 10 people would buy our course over a Udemy's course because we gave internships, guaranteed internships. But you know what happened? 9 out of 10 people would buy the course, but only 2 out of those 9 people who bought the course would actually end up applying for the internship, which means that it's brainwashed into their minds that internship is very important. I should get this college with this new education policy in NEP, and this college curriculum AICTE rules, internship has become mandatory. But then do I really want to go and apply for it after completing it? Do I want to take the effort of, putting up my resume, putting up my projects and sitting in an interview? No. So what I'm trying to say is, sir, like without going even further into this, that we realized a lot of things as to what the user was thinking. And that did not happen over a period of 2 to 3 years. This happened over a period of 2 to 3 months. We would put up internships as a feature. We would realize people are not applying to it. We would pull out the internship feature and we would change our pitch to the customer. Then after changing the pitch to the customer, our sales would reduce. And then we were like, how can we make sure sales are back again to its original path? So this was basically a reiterate, do. That's why we named our company Unschool. When you learn something wrong, what you do, you unlearn and you relearn it the right way. That's what Unschool meant for us. A lot of people assume that Unschool is no school or opposite to school. No, we're saying, schooling has been done in a particular fashion for centuries and decades, centuries, thousands of years now, right? How can we unschool that and reschool that to provide the equipped skills for a student? And how do we make them learn according to the industry standards today? So I hope that answers your questions. I know I diverted a little bit, but I hope you got the crux of it.
Yeah. I think you enunciated a very important principle out there, that while there may be an aspiration, the willingness to put the effort behind the aspiration is not necessary, and that needs to be taken into account when you design your product.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much. I think we are at about 7:19. I'll hand it back to Professor Rao for the rest.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Prasad.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Professor Prasad will come back also for one or two questions in case we have to take those questions. Because it's very interesting. We need to understand how this is addressing the concerns and how it is also working for your organization as a concept. So that trajectory and that phases of growth that you have navigated is something to be understood very carefully. I think we have a few relevant questions also, and after that we'll see if we can come back to that.
Sure.
So far, we have talked about your journey and your organization's journey. And so I will save some time for the members in the audience to ask you questions directly. So friends, please raise your hand. In the meantime, I'll prime you with one or two questions.
Sure.
There are lots of questions actually, so let me prioritize. One question is, if you can help the audience understand how to approach investors. For example, one of the members is having a business in AI and data science and would like to approach angel investors. So you can give some broad ideas and some tips about the approach strategy itself. That's
Sure.
the first one. I'll come back to the other question a little later.
Sure. So I think keeping your eyes wide open is very important. So when they say bootstrapping, right? Bootstrapping doesn't just mean starting with no funds. Bootstrapping means starting with your own savings if you have that, raising funds from your family, close family, and your close friends. That's also bootstrapping, right? So those are your first angel investors, honestly, right? Sometimes they don't want stake in your company. They just want to, as a goodwill, give you that money to start off. So I think, as founders, sometimes we also have that ego. We don't want to reach out to our close family and friends. We don't want to be in that space. I think as a founder, you need to lose that, get away from that shame, go out there, show your face, show your idea to the right person, and speak your heart out and raise funds from them. That is one. Second is, again, keep your eyes wide open, because there are many incubators out there with, Startup India and all of these schemes. There's many incubators, including your IIM Bangalore, IIT Bombay, T Hub here in Hyderabad, Triple IT Hyderabad here in Hyderabad, multiple others, right? As the years are growing, each and every college is coming up with a incubation center. So apply there, get into business plan competitions, join sessions like these, join networking events like these, right? I wouldn't say join all the networking events. Don't fill your head with a lot of information that each and every information becomes useless after a point of time, right? Choose where you get your information in the right way. And through an event, maybe you're meeting someone who is an angel investor, right? You speak about your product and that person becomes your angel investor. So basically what I'm talking about here is one way of doing it when you don't have any contacts at all. But I'll tell you my own journey. I never went behind funds because I was profitable, right? I did not look at growth. I looked at sustainability. I focused on building a profitable business. What happens eventually in time is that these venture capitalists, it's their job each and every day to look into the internet, to look into databases, to find startups like you who are exciting, who are making revenues. They have every subscription possible. They know if you are a registered company, they have the data of that. They probably understand that you're doing very well. Your Instagram followers are increasing by thousands every day. Your YouTube subscribers, they have information of all of this, guys. While you are looking for angel investors, these VCs and angel investors are looking for you. Please remember that. It works both ways. It's not just one way. So for me, after about 1.5 years, all of these VCs started approaching me. They've started writing emails. Hey, your business Unschool sounds interesting. Can we get on a call? What it would be is about a 20 minutes call, and they would get to know about me. If they like it, they would ask for a second call. If they don't like it, or if they see that it's not the scale at which they invest in, they would say, great, be in touch. And then I kept in touch. After 1.5 year of speaking to them on the first call is when I would raise funds from them eventually. So it's a long journey. Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, initially, go bootstrap, go to your family, go to your friends, ask them for funds. Eventually, they'll start finding you. And third, look at incubators and accelerators around you, apply for that. You fail, it's fine. Keep applying, keep applying, keep applying. To Y Combinator, for example, on an average, on your fourth attempt is when you are selected, and it has a 0.5% selection rate. There's about 40,000 startups which apply for Y Combinator every year, every annum, and 200 startups are selected. That's 0.5% selection rate. And on the fourth attempt, that too, right? So I'm just saying that you just have to go at it. And if you want to find angel investors, go to LinkedIn, go to Google, search angel investors of 2024, angel investor of 2023. There'll be Inc. 42 articles, Times of India articles. Go out there, find their names there. That's how I found Mekin Maheshwari, who is the co-founder of Flipkart. I found him to be one of the top investors in 2021. I found his email ID somehow, wrote to him. He said, let's get on a call on a Sunday morning. By evening, he said, I would be investing X amount of money in your startup. Right. So, yeah, you have to do it the hard way. There's no right answer for it.
Amazing. Thank you very much. I think those are the tips that one can actually note down and work on. Basically, thematically, what you said is that keep your eyes wide open and ego in the back seat, and then put yourself in the forefront of making yourself visible and be part of the networks. And then as much as you are seeking out for funds, so much so the investors are also seeking for good startups. So make sure that you are noticed, and then the journey would begin there. And of course, the success rate is something, the stats that you mentioned is not to scare people, but that's the reality. I think once we know the journey difficulties, and accordingly we prep ourselves and move forward. So that's fantastic. I'll quickly ask my second question later, but first take Dr. Anita Raman. She has raised her hand. Over to you, Dr. Anita.
Thank you, Dr. Rao Garu, and thank you, Dr. Prasad, for wonderful session. Thank you, Rahul. Yeah, my query is, if you were to look at the skill sets of our graduates, they are not rightly, ready for employment. Okay, so my query is that how did you build this community around getting these internships and placements for, again, an online platform or a course? How did you help them integrate their skills into employability? That's my first query. And second would be, once you finish, I'll ask again.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Anita. Very good question. So what we did, Dr. Anita, is essentially, so we started attracting. So first, what we realized is, while everyone is running behind your Infosys and Wipros and TCSs around the country because of their brand name, we said, let's go the other way around. Let's look at a startup that started about 6 months back and see if they want skilled interns because they don't have funds at that point in time. Let's get them onboarded as corporate partners for Unschool who would hire from our learners, right? And they would end up paying 10,000 rupees as stipend. Their expectations wouldn't be so high, but what they needed is passion and zeal from a person, right? So what we did throughout the course is made them work on a minor project, made them work on a major project. If they scored less than 6 out of 10 on a minor project, they're made to redo the project. Same for the major project, right? So there was multiple points and interventions that we created for the students, saying, boss, here is the carrot. You have to run towards it, but it's not going to be easy. You can't just bypass the system and get there, use shortcuts to get there. There is a carrot here. There is a startup that's going to pay you 10,000 rupees by the end of this program, by the end of this course. And you're what, 19 years old? 10,000 rupees for you is gold, right? Is equivalent to probably like 5 lakhs for us at the age of 40, 50, whatever it is, right? So that's what we made them run towards. We understood the psychology of students. So while we didn't do a lot in terms of, you can ask me, they're not meeting the industry demands and everything right now. What we realized also, ma'am, is that these companies are not really looking for people who are extraordinarily good at skills. What they need is person with the intent to learn and running towards the right ambition. We realized that and we inculcated that. For example, through our third year of building this company, we realized that one, in terms of business, a person would come, buy a course, do an internship and leave the Unschool community. He would never become a returning customer. One, in business sense, it did not make sense for us. Second, we have like 3 lakh users or 1.2 lakh paid customers. But each time we come back, everyone, there's a new set of community that we have to build. So what we did is we put app like Quora and Instagram together. We brought it together. We took idea from Facebook, that Facebook groups are there. So we created first groups that we created on that community portal was football, IPL. So people, what they started doing is they came to IPL group and they started making memes around Mumbai Indians or whatever it is. They started spending more time, which means that they wouldn't just come to learn the video or do the project. They would actually come to spend more time talking to each other. And eventually, once we got them hooked to a certain extent, we started building AI groups. We started building machine learning groups, data science groups. Eventually, what happened is our instructors became so free because a student is writing 500 lines of code, and in one line of code, there is an error. He's not able to figure it out. Previously, what used to happen is everything used to go to the instructor. Our instructors were overloaded. We used to keep building more and more. After we build that community, this person would copy paste that screenshot where he's getting the error, and other students would answer those questions. Hey, this line of error is because of this syntax error, change this. So it started becoming a crowd-funded or crowdsourced platform. Each student would answer each other's question. And then what happened is an average session time, let's say a student came to spend about 20 minutes on the Unschool platform to complete the course. It suddenly tripled to about 60 minutes. They would spend 15 minutes learning from the course. They would spend the other 45 minutes going through the groups, going through the community, texting each other, liking each other's comments, participating in our contests that we would do on the community. So essentially, what we try to replicate is what would happen in college and school. Can we do it online? So that was the idea, and we started building all of this, ma'am. Maybe it doesn't answer your question directly as to how we met the industry standards, but at least these were the ways that we incentivize students to get to the right place.
Thank you so much. You actually worked around the psychology and the behavior of your community of the students, and then you started building it.
Correct.
So my second question was related to that only. How did you scale up? So I think you weaved around the story, and you had told me half the story. Yeah, scalability was one of the important things where startups, fail to reach. Where doing it in small bits and pieces obviously fascinates you, but as you grow, this becomes a kind of botheration as to how do you scale up for many of the startups. So my query was around that. So if you could answer, it would be great.
Sure.
And thank you very much for your insights. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll just answer it very precisely. Go to Y Combinator's website. Their tagline, or I think one of their slogans says, do things that don't scale. An investor telling you this, one of the best in the world. Imagine what they're trying to say is, boss, don't care about anything. Do what you think is right. Do what you think that will bring the customers onto your website. Do what you think that will make the customer buy the product. Eventually, with the money that is there in your bank, you will do wonders. Without having money in the bank today, worrying about how will I become scalable tomorrow is a big mistake. So do things that don't scale in the beginning. Don't worry about the future. Eventually, you'll have money, and that money will become a factor for you to solve those problems or your worries in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rahul, for that response. We'll quickly take Srikanth. Srikanth is from London School of Economics. Over to you, Srikanth.
Thank you, sir. Rahul, that was amazing, actually. I was having some different impression by joining here, but your confidence and everything is really amazing. So generally, we only talk with regards to profit and growth. So the question is, like, we are a very price conscious country. From your consumer products to the higher education, we are a very price conscious country. In this kind of market, how do you navigate? Many countries, many companies like Flipkart or any other company is only navigating growth by offering discounts. I'm like a huge cash. Like whenever I open my phone, Zepto sends me 100 rupees. Then only I realize that I have a Zepto, so that I should burn this 100. So how can startups avoid this trap of offering discounts and scaling up? No, it will not be sustainable in the long run.
Right. So, Mr. Srikanth, wonderful question, first of all, and thank you. So I think, Mr. Srikanth, this is where I would differ with you in a certain way, because it becomes sustainable over time because you're working with a population or a demographic like India, the highest populated country in the world. So you play to your strengths. If you're running your product and your business in India, play to its strengths. That's what I would say. Understand the psychology of the demographic that you're working in and work around that. When Indians are already price conscious, that is one, and there are competitors around you raising funds to provide it at a cheaper rate, you either become a very premium product. By becoming a very premium product, you're looking at lesser customers. That's also fine. But can you name a few car companies that are making very premium products? You talk about your Tatas, you talk about your, nowadays, I think MG is one of the Indian-based thing. Multiple, right? So I'm not getting them in my mind, but they're always working towards the larger mass out there. And that's what I was talking about, the escape velocity. If you want to hit escape velocity and see a mass audience out there, you work towards a competitive pricing. And that competitive pricing is not your doom. It's actually a boon for you because the number of people who's going to consume your product is eventually going to increase. In a country like India, with a population growing as fast as this, I think I read a stat by 2025, there's going to be 600 million youth in this country. Out of the 1.5 billion population, 600 million will be youth. So if you're going to touch that youth, 600 million, in my case, that's what I ran towards, right? I didn't focus on, at the same time, when Udemy was selling its course at 700, I would sell my course at 7,000. But if you consider the upgrades and the Byju's or whatever it is, they were providing almost similar features as mine, pricing it at 70,000 and sometimes 7 lakh rupees as well. But I was running around the 7,000 space. And I was running behind the 7,000 space because I wanted mass. And that's why even a company like Upgrade doing probably hundreds of crores is not having as many users as I do. I obviously don't have as many revenues as they do. But then I have those users. So it's obviously a choice or a path that you have to take. I would only disagree that it is sustainable. You just have to choose your path and you just have to choose your price point based on the product that you're building.
That's fine, but what do you say about Unacademy and Byju's model? So what went wrong for them?
So see, Byju's went the growth path, I would say. Right. They, without naming companies again in a private public forum. I mean, they focused on raising a lot of funds to acquire a lot of companies. What should have been done over a period of 5 years was done in a period of 5 months, right? And that becomes too hard to handle. And in Unacademy, I think they're still doing well. I mean, all of these are respectable companies, and these entrepreneurs are inspiration for me to become an entrepreneur, in fact. So I can't really comment on what went wrong with them. I'm sure they are the reason why I am a founder today. But I think they're doing great. But the only thing I would say is that the big stalwarts in the education sector are working towards competitive exams, right? When the world is talking about, not everyone has to have an IIT degree to become successful in life. Not everyone has to become an IIM graduate to become successful in life. Most of the companies are still working towards that path, and because of the brainwashing, how we are inbred as Indians and our mentality, we're still running towards that path. But Unschool, on the other hand, I went the other way around. Boss, even if you're a computer science engineer, come learn UI UX design from me. do an internship and eventually change your career to become that, because that might be your passion. I joined engineering, and in the first 1 year, I realized this is not my cup of tea at all. And I started spending 90% of my time outside the classroom. So that's all I would like to say, Mr. Srikanth. We can also connect offline. Happy to chat more.
Yeah, that's very sensible.
Right,
Thank you.
Srikanth, over a cup of tea. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think these are very interesting points. And apart from what we learn, the lessons on the track, other viewpoints are always there. But I think we should focus on learning, and we should focus on picking up the good things that we have from the stalwarts, from the predecessors, because there are a lot of people running on this track. And I think we need to focus on the positives and see how we can use those positives in our journey. And that's it. And remember that it's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. And
Yes.
always that will help us stay focused. That serves as a guiding compass. One question I wanted to ask in this guiding compass related issues is throughout your entrepreneurial journey, I'm sure you would have faced at least a couple of ethical dilemmas. Maybe you can cite one or two ethical dilemmas and also help us understand how did you address them or how did you navigate them?
Sure. I think one of the things that I think EdTech did very well during the COVID times, and after that, apparent to everyone and known by everyone, that it's been seeing a downtrend since then. So as part of the process, even we had to be laying off people, right? So that was one of the biggest ethical dilemmas, because everyone who's worked for Unschool, one of the pillars on which Unschool stands is culture, and the average of age of people working with Unschool is about 24. So we are a young startup driven by young people, young employees, asking them to leave, already knowing that, even if they were paid by a funded startup, probably, let's say 10 lakhs per annum, they were ready to continue working with Unschool at 7 lakhs per annum at a 30% discount on what they are worth, only because of the culture, only because of what they could learn from the business. I think it was one of the most difficult moments for me as an entrepreneur, having to lay them off, telling them that, you won't have a job from tomorrow with us. But what I realized through the process is what most startups do wrong is during the layoff process or letting people go, and why I'm saying this is one of the most important traits for a founder. Knowing when to hire and knowing when to fire is extremely important. And as part of that process, I think one thing that we did really well is speak to each and everyone individually, explain them why we had to take this decision, right? Explain them what led us to be in this situation and what we can do for them tomorrow. I think some of my best friends till date remain the people that I had to lay off. We had to lay off, but those continue to remain my biggest friends, biggest cheerleaders. So that's very important, how you treat your employees. Your employees are your company at the end of the day. That's about it, sir. I don't want to take more time even thinking and coming up with something.
No problem. No
That's
problem. I think that's a good point that you mentioned. How do we treat the people when they are about to be laid off, and the kind of open and transparent communication that you keep, and also when things get better, you would have open doors for them to, they can come back and work. So you remain friends. So that's a basic thing, and it is consistent with your own learnings as vice president of ISEC, right from those early days. In fact, ISEC thing has given you a lot of strengths, and that worked as a capital for you to get into Unschool or even the previous work that you did before Unschool. That capital is essentially to understand the mindset of the students. You understand the psychology of the students. You have your finger on their pulse very well. And that is the biggest capital that you have brought to the table while fueling this idea of business at Unschool. I think that worked very well. And I'm sure in this response that you have given about ethical dilemmas and navigating layoffs, that's very, very difficult. Even for established founders, employers, it's very difficult. But those who have systems in place to have open and transparent communication have really done well and treat employees as, alumni who can come back to the institute. I think that's a good way to look at them. One last question I want to ask. I know we are going beyond the stipulated time, but this is one quick thing. Earlier, I wanted to ask, but I somehow missed out. What are one or two gamification strategies that you used to help your learners complete the course? One or two that are very unique.
Sure. So one of the things that we did is I was speaking about the community portal, right? So what we did is we started I think Kunal Shah being an investor in Unschool, this coincidence that what he said is, you pay your credit card bills, I'm going to give you credit coins, and those credit coins can be used to get discounts on your favorite brands. So that was the point of inspiration. And what we said is, you know what? Come and spend more time on the community. Ask a question, post a doubt, post a comment, like something, join a live session. I'm going to give you credits, Unschool credits for all of it. And eventually, I partnered with a coupon company and I said all of these credits can be exchanged for discounts on Swiggy, Zomato, Amazon, Flipkart, etc. So this coupon company had like hundreds of brands under their wing. We partnered with them. And you said, you know what, for Unschool learners, we need exclusive coupons. Let's say Swiggy is already giving 20% discount today. I need 25%. So we cracked that kind of partnership with them. And then we encouraged students. And then we did these daily contests. We would put up a meme and say, the best comment would win 100 credits today. So people started flocking. People started, trying to get into the top 10 of the leaderboard. I needed more coins. So that sort of became a virtual race for them, virtual competition for them. It's like Instagram followers, right? It's doing nothing for me, but then I have more followers, which means more opportunities, more eyeballs. So the same thing we created in Unschool. That's what led to this average session time being 15 minutes and increasing to 60 minutes over time. People would start spending time. So I think that was one of the most important gamification methods that we used. Did not really help us increase revenue or business, honestly, but definitely kept brought up the Unschool community or Unschool family, as we call it. I think that became a real thing.
No, very interesting. I think the social graph that you built to start with as an infrastructure, very good. Second, the gamification that you have deployed to sustain the levels of interest in the community itself were very good. And
Right.
some of those have spilled over as benefits of driving course completion as well.
Yes.
I was actually coming from the other end. So gamification for completion rather than building community in itself. But
right.
Good, Rahul. Thank you very much for this time, energy, and expertise that you have put in for today's conversation on WiseViews. I would request Professor Prasad to chip in case you have any unfinished questions, and then I'll wrap it up, sir.
I think there's a question which has come across the discussion. Pricing is a key element when you looked at, your value chain, and also from the profitability point of view. So do you have, have you used some sort of unbundling, or, what kind of strategies have you used for pricing?
Right, sir. So essentially, I think around pricing, I mean, from a passion point of view, sir, for getting business and for getting revenue, I've always wanted to keep it on the lower end, something that would fit the pocket money of a student, which typically is about 5,000 to 10,000 rupees today for a student, right? In today's day, I wanted to keep it around that price. I was not a big fan of increasing prices to make sure that revenues and business is growing. That is one. But the second thing is what we did is we started packaging. Let's say there is a AI course. We said, you know what? There's a lot of learners joining the AI course only to realize later that, boss, there's a lot of prerequisites that I have to finish before starting learning AI. So what we did is we put together Java, then Python, then data science, and then machine learning, and then AI. We called it a tech pack. And then we started selling it for, let's say, 20,000 bucks. Each course otherwise would cost you 7,000, into 5 would be 35,000. But here, all the 5 put together, you would get it at 20,000. So that was a huge discount on their end. And on the other end, we were making 20,000 per customer and also converting them to be a repeat customer eventually. So I think in our case, that's what we did, at least, to be able to get more customer lifetime value. That's our average revenue per user. ARPU is what is called in startup terms. So we increased our ARPU that way.
Thank you very much. I think
yeah,
there's value there.
That was a very good insight. Thank you so much, Rahul. As I mentioned, this conversation was not merely about finding the balance between profitability and growth. Overall, that has been the overarching theme. But then from that discussion, I think we have picked up many takeaways. And some of them, for a quick summary, I want to mention is that you have to start any business for right reasons. And that's a very good starting point. And also remember that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And also often it works if you do things because you think it is right for your customers rather than being driven by or liked by your investor. I think first one is a derivative of a second outcome rather than the reverse. So that's a very important takeaway that you have. And the third and the most important that you mentioned is even if your product is at a not a perfect stage, I think you should start releasing prototypes and working on it rather than going crazy behind perfections. That perfectionist mentality will not help for startups. That's a very, very good takeaway for members around the screen this evening. You have to also realize that investors are trying to seek out you and good startups like you as much as you are trying to seek investments. And in that ecosystem, be noticeable and press the right kind of buttons, be visible, network, understand who are there as predecessors, stalwarts, leaders of thought, leaders of action, leaders of business, and then be visible to all of them. I think one of them might call you and say, I would like to have a 20-minute discussion, like the anecdote that you shared. In your journey, you've also mentioned that launch fast and fail fast. I think that's a very good dictum to go by for the early startups. I think that's a good point. In your journey, you've also mentioned that the one that you deployed, nudging the learners by giving peer stats. That if supposing you have 100 of the class have got stats of a lot of people have finished and you have not finished, so focusing on those who are not finished completed the course, you nudge them with some stats, and then it's a kind of a peer pressure as well, but positive one to help. That's fantastic. Bootstrapping has to be understood in the right way. It should not be understood in a literal sense, but I think we should stop, put an end to our ego, go and ask your friends, those who are willing to actually share funds with you on goodwill basis. They are supposed to be originally called angel investors. And then you have all other avenues and networking methods that we talked about earlier. Some of the interesting points that you have talked about is at multiple points in the journey, you will have to keep changing your interventions and make sure it works. The tweaking is not only going to provide right solutions, but also it is going to make it very interesting even for you to experiment and start working on it. I think listening to the insights, taking the feedback, and then working on it and providing so many interventions will actually go towards perfection, which originally or some of the founders actually wanted to do that. But that's the right path to working on it. Play to your strengths in a demography like India. In India, the numbers are large. You start any business, even if you want to become a Baba, you'll have huge absolute numbers. So if you really want to get into business, which is not a Baba kind of business, you will have stats coming your way to give you feedback, and still you can play to your strengths. You will find your segment, you will find your audience, you will find your revenues, you will find your growth eventually. That's the trajectory that you have helped us go through. The size of youth in this country is a major statistic for us to go by, plan our future, and make this country a dependable one for startups. And I think majority of the startups that are now working are figuring out products around youth so that they get a large base for that. Ethical dilemmas one would face, but definitely a great deal of maturity is required while handling and navigating these dilemmas. But there's no way out. Ethical dilemmas will always come, and the journey is longer, more dilemmas you would face. But I think we also grow, we also become mature, and we handle the situations accordingly. These are some of the finest points that you mentioned. I'm sure all the members have enjoyed as much as I did this evening, and we will write a small summary of this conversation. I'll request, PPT is already with us. I'll share that summary with you, and once you look at that, we'll upload it on our website. For others to learn, those who have missed the session today, a large number of people have joined this evening on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. But those who have missed out for reasons of convenience, time actually not suiting them, they can go back to our website and learn. They have this video uploaded there and also the text summary. We'll share that summary. Once we hear from you, we'll upload it. So on behalf of ICFAI, we thank you very much for being a very successful young leader, a leader who is an inspiration to many young leaders. I think that's the full concept of leadership that is being displayed in yourself, in your actions, and in your organization. I wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch with you and wish you all the best ever.
Thank you, sir. I couldn't have put the summary in better words. In fact, both of you, whatever I explained, you could turn that into few words and put it in such a beautiful way. Thank you so much for being my host and making me feel comfortable. Thank you to the whole ICFAI group and all the audience for taking time out on a Friday night, on a weekend to come see me. Really honored. And yeah, anything that I can do in the future as well, please feel free to connect me with me on LinkedIn for people who want to connect with me. Happy to help in any way that I can. Thank you so much.
We will stay connected with you, Rahul. And ladies and gentlemen, that was a wonderful conversation with him. Please come back on Friday next, that is on 24th of January, for yet another conversation with another great leader, so that we can stay learning, continuously learning. And we would love to communicate that through our social handles. And we hope to see you again at 6:30 p.m. on Friday, 24th of January. Till then, go through Unschool website and see some of the interventions that they have done. Google Rahul Varma, and then you get nice videos how he has explained certain things in various fora where he has spoken. He is actually a darling of youth, young aspirants who are seeking out entrepreneurship. He is a good role model and he speaks extremely well. He is a very good teacher, as I mentioned in the beginning. So browse through, learn and enjoy, and come back next week. Good night and have a great weekend.